Imagine sitting in a small coffee shop on a rainy evening. You're relaxing with a warm cup between your hands, scrolling through messages when a friend from another country tells you he needs help urgently. You want to send him money right away. In today's world, that sounds simple. Just open your banking app, fill in a transfer form, hit send. But then you remember different currency, different bank, different regulations. Fees appear, waiting time appears, approvals appear. Suddenly, something that should feel natural between two human beings becomes a chain of conditions tied by an invisible authority. This is the world before Bitcoin, a world where we rely completely on institutions to move value. Banks verify transactions, central banks manage currency, payment companies stand in the middle of every flow of money. Trust in them is not optional, it's mandatory. For centuries, money has only existed within systems where someone, somewhere, has the power to approve, reject, freeze, inflate, or surveil. In 2008, when the global financial crisis shook economies and people watched governments print trillions to rescue institutions deemed too big to fail, the fragility of this trust became painfully clear. It was at that moment, quietly and almost anonymously, that a person or a group under the name Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It proposed a radical idea. What if two people could transfer value directly, just like handing cash to someone in person, but across the internet, across borders, without asking permission from anyone? The idea sounded impossible at first. Digital money existed long before Bitcoin, but it always required a central server to track balances. If Anna sent David $50 digitally, the system had to update her account to -50 and his to +50. But what if someone copied that digital file? What if they sent the same coin to multiple people? This problem, known as double spending, was the barrier that prevented decentralized digital currency from becoming real. Every solution before Bitcoin relied on a trusted authority to prevent cheating. Without that authority, digital money was like a file you could copy endlessly, which means it was worthless. Bitcoin changed that, not by patching the old system, but by designing something completely new. Satoshi introduced a concept that allowed the entire network to agree on one version of history. No central bank, no company, no government. Just mathematics, cryptography, game theory, and thousands of strangers connected around the world. For the first time, value could be transferred digitally without trusting a middleman. And the way Bitcoin achieves this is the heart of our journey today. So, how does Bitcoin actually work? What happens behind the scenes when you send a transaction? How does the network know you really own the coins you want to spend? How does it verify you're not faking or duplicating anything? These questions are not just technical curiosities. Understanding them reveals why Bitcoin is more than just a currency that goes up and down in price. It is a technological breakthrough built on principles of transparency, security, and decentralization. To begin unpacking this system, imagine a giant notebook, not stored in one place, but copied across tens of thousands of computers worldwide. Every time a transaction happens, it is recorded in that notebook. Everyone can see it. No one can erase old pages. If someone tries to alter a past transaction, everyone else will notice because their copies don't match. This notebook is what we call the blockchain, a chain of blocks containing transaction data linked together using cryptography. At first glance, the idea seems simple, but inside it is a structure so elegantly designed that it prevents manipulation without needing trust. Each block is like a page filled with transactions. Once full, it is sealed using a cryptographic hash and attached to the previous block. If someone tries to change even a small detail, like replacing a transaction, the hash changes completely, breaking the entire chain. And because the chain is stored on thousands of independent computers called nodes, altering the past means convincing the entire network to accept a new history, something extraordinarily difficult. This is the foundation of Bitcoin's integrity. No single authority writes the ledger. The world writes it together, and instead of trust, it uses consensus. But the blockchain alone is not enough to make Bitcoin work. We still need a way for users to own coins, to prove ownership, and to spend them securely. We need a mechanism that determines which block is valid and who gets to add the next one to the chain. We need to see how Bitcoin decides what is true within its universe. In the coming sections, we will dive deeper into these mechanics. We will move from the big picture into the detailed flow of a Bitcoin transaction. We will learn about cryptographic keys and the idea that your coins are not stored inside your wallet, but rather on the blockchain, assigned to an address that only you can unlock with your private key. We will explore mining, the process that secures the network, verifies blocks, and issues new Bitcoins. We will examine how thousands of miners worldwide compete to solve computational puzzles, burning energy not out of waste, but to defend the network against fraud. For now, what matters is this: Bitcoin works not because we trust someone, but because we trust no one. The rules are enforced by code, open for anyone to examine. And whether you're a billionaire, a student, or someone in a remote village with only a phone, you play by the same rules. No permissions, no exceptions. As you finish your coffee in that rainy evening scene, imagine a different world. One where you could open an app, enter your friend's Bitcoin address, press send, and within minutes, value moves across continents, without banks, without waiting, without explanation. That world isn't a fantasy anymore. It exists. And to understand why it works, really works, we must now open the first technical door: the blockchain, the record keeper of Bitcoin. To understand Bitcoin technically, we need to step into the core structure that keeps it alive: the blockchain. We already pictured it as a giant notebook shared among thousands of computers, but now it's time to walk inside that notebook and inspect how its pages are organized, how entries are written, and why it becomes almost impossible to forge. Imagine this notebook spread across the world. It sits on machines in homes, offices, universities, even underground bunkers. These machines are not connected by trust or friendship. Most don't even know who the others are. Yet, they all maintain a synchronized record of every Bitcoin transaction ever made since the first block mined by Satoshi in 2009. This massive registry is updated in real time, and every participant has the right to verify any transaction, any balance, any block. In traditional finance, a bank keeps a ledger and you trust it to record your balance correctly. Bitcoin flips this logic entirely. Instead of trusting one central entity, everyone becomes a verifier. And because there are thousands of independent copies, the truth about who owns what does not depend on belief. It depends on mathematics and consensus. So, what exactly is inside one of these blocks? A block is essentially a container. Inside it, you'll find a collection of transactions, each specifying inputs and outputs, each signed cryptographically, each pointing to coins previously created or received. Along with these transactions, every block contains metadata: a timestamp, a reference to the previous block's hash, and a nonce, a number that miners manipulate during the mining process, which we'll uncover later. Once a block is completed and accepted by the network, it becomes part of the permanent history, attached to the chain like a link forged in steel. The term hash is crucial here. A hash is like a digital fingerprint of data. You feed information into a hashing algorithm, and it spits out a fixed-length string of characters. The fascinating part is that even the smallest change in input, adding a comma, flipping a single bit, produces a totally different hash. In Bitcoin, the hash function used is SHA-256, a cryptographic algorithm designed to be one-way. You can compute the hash from the data, but you cannot reverse the process to uncover the original data. It is like knowing the smell of a cake, but having no recipe to recreate it. Each block carries the hash of the previous block. That simple design decision is what makes Bitcoin so sturdy. If an attacker tries to alter a single transaction inside a block from years ago, the hash of that block changes. This breaks the link with the next block, and the next, and the next, causing a domino effect. To rewrite history, the attacker would need to recompute all hashes of all subsequent blocks faster than the entire legitimate network can produce new ones. This is where Bitcoin's security emerges. Not from secrecy, not from restricted access, but from computational difficulty and distributed consensus. To visualize this, imagine a stack of transparent glass tiles. Each tile contains inscriptions representing transactions. On the bottom left corner of every new tile, there is a unique symbol generated based on the inscriptions beneath it. If you try to sneakily alter a tile in the middle of the stack, the symbols on all tiles above it would no longer match. The entire structure exposes you instantly. The network rejects your forged version because all other copies of the stack across the world remain unchanged, still referencing the original tile. You would have to rebuild the whole tower yourself, a task realistically impossible without controlling most of the network's computing power. But how do new transactions find their place in this chain? The process begins when someone initiates a transfer. Suppose Anna wants to send David zero point 0.3 BTC. She creates a transaction using her private key to sign the request. This signed message contains inputs, what coins she previously received and has the right to spend, and outputs, David's address and the amount he will receive. Once signed, this transaction is broadcast to the network, spreading across nodes like ripples in water. Nodes are the guardians of the ledger. Their job is not to mine, but to validate. They inspect each transaction carefully. Does Anna have enough unspent coins? Is the signature valid? Is she attempting to spend the same funds twice? If something feels off, the node discards the transaction. If it passes all checks, it enters a pool of pending transactions called the mempool, waiting to be included in the next block. Now imagine thousands of similar transactions flying across the network every minute. People buying goods, trading Bitcoin, sending gifts, making payments. All these pending transactions gather like travelers waiting at a train station. But trains don't depart automatically. They need a conductor, and in Bitcoin, these conductors are miners. Before we move into mining, let's look deeper into the blockchain's decentralized nature. In traditional databases, if one server goes down or gets compromised, damage can be catastrophic. But in Bitcoin, no single server matters. 1,000 nodes can disappear, and the network keeps running. Even if a government tries to shut down a portion of nodes within its borders, the ledger persists elsewhere. The blockchain is an organism with no head to cut off. What ensures synchronization among thousands of nodes? A consensus mechanism. Bitcoin uses proof of work, but consensus itself precedes mining. When a miner proposes a new block, nodes check its validity. Are transactions formatted properly? Are signatures valid? Does the block reference the correct previous hash? If anything is wrong, the network ignores it. Only a valid block built according to rules can be added to the chain. There is one more elegant detail hidden within the blockchain's design: transparency. Anyone, right now, can open a Block Explorer website and view the first transaction ever sent, the largest transfers, wallets holding huge sums, or the exact timestamp of a decade-old payment. You don't need a bank statement. You don't ask permission. The ledger is public, auditable, open to scrutiny. Every mistake, every transfer, every reward remains etched in digital stone. Of course, transparency doesn't mean lack of privacy. Bitcoin addresses are pseudonymous, not named after individuals. You can see the flows, but you don't automatically know the identity behind them unless someone links their address to their real-world identity. This balance, transparency in mechanics, privacy in identity, is one of Bitcoin's philosophical pillars. At this stage, you might sense something profound. Bitcoin is not just software. It is coordination without leaders, order without central authority, a time-stamped archive of economic history that no single person can rewrite. It achieves this using cryptography, distributed networks, and mathematical rules, all while functioning globally, 24 hours a day without rest. But our journey is still at the surface. We understand the ledger, but not the keys that unlock funds. We know transactions fill blocks, but not how ownership is proven. To dive deeper, we need to examine wallets, private keys, public keys, and how Bitcoin defines the concept of owning coins without ever physically storing them. And so we step forward into part 3. We will follow a single transaction through its entire life cycle, from generation in a wallet, through digital signatures, into the mempool, and finally into a block. We will decode UTXO, a simple idea that gives Bitcoin flexibility and security. Prepare to walk into the heart of Bitcoin's transaction model, the invisible logic behind every coin ever spent. To understand what it really means to own Bitcoin, we must dismantle a common misconception. People often imagine a Bitcoin wallet like a leather wallet containing coins or bills. But in truth, a Bitcoin wallet doesn't hold any coins at all. There are no digital coins stored like files inside your phone or computer. Instead, your wallet holds something far more important: the keys that unlock the coins recorded on the blockchain. Ownership in Bitcoin is not physical, it is cryptographic. And it begins with two mathematical siblings, the private key and the public key. Imagine your private key as a secret combination to an unbreakable safe. Whoever knows that combination can open the safe and take everything inside. Your public key, on the other hand, is like the address printed on the front of the safe. Anyone can see it, anyone can send funds to it, but nobody can open it without the secret code. From the public key, another piece is derived, your Bitcoin address, a shorter, more user-friendly string of characters where payments are directed. It's what you share with others when you want to receive Bitcoin. The magic lies in how these keys interact. The private key generates the public key through a one-way mathematical function using elliptic curve cryptography. You can go from private key to public key easily, but reversing the process would require solving problems so computationally vast that the known universe does not hold enough atoms to represent the needed calculations. This is where the security of Bitcoin begins, not from firewalls or passwords, but from pure mathematics. Every time you send Bitcoin, you are not moving coins. You are signing a message that says, I transfer control of these coins to another public key. Your private key produces a digital signature unique to that transaction, and anyone can verify using your public key that the signature is legitimate. Yet, no one can forge a signature without the private key. It is like leaving a perfect handwritten signature that proves who you are, but no copier on Earth could ever replicate it. Now, let's follow the journey of a single transaction, a real story inside the system. Anna opens her wallet and wants to send 0.1 BTC to David. She enters his address, types the amount, and presses send. Instantly, her wallet constructs a transaction. But here's where Bitcoin becomes interesting. Instead of tracking balances like a bank, Bitcoin uses something called the UTXO model, unspent transaction outputs. Think of UTXO as pieces of digital cash. If Anna previously received 0.3 BTC from one address and 0.2 BTC from another, she doesn't simply have 0.5 BTC in one place. She holds two separate UTXOs, one worth 0.3 BTC and another worth 0.2 BTC. When she wants to send 0.1 BTC, she must spend one or more of these UTXOs as inputs to her transaction, much like breaking a bill in a store. If she spends the 0.3 BTC UTXO, she sends 0.1 BTC to David, and the remaining 0.2 BTC returns to her as change, becoming a new UTXO controlled by her wallet. It's the digital equivalent of handing a $10 bill to buy a $4 coffee and receiving $6 back. This model brings elegance. There are no accounts that fluctuate up or down. Instead, the blockchain is a long web of UTXOs, continuously created and consumed, always adding up to the total circulating supply of Bitcoin. Each coin exists only as the output of a previous transaction, and ownership is proven by signatures. Once Anna's wallet constructs the transaction, it signs it using her private key. This signature is mathematical proof that she is the rightful owner of the input UTXOs. The signed transaction is then broadcast to the network, sending copies of it to nearby nodes. These nodes check it carefully. Does Anna's signature match her public key? Does she actually have the unspent outputs she claims? Is she attempting to reuse a UTXO already spent in another transaction? Only if all rules are followed does the transaction enter the mempool, a waiting area where valid transactions reside until they are included in a block. During busy network periods, the mempool can swell with thousands of transactions, all patiently waiting for their turn. But how does the network decide which transactions enter the next block? Miners choose them, usually prioritizing those offering higher transaction fees. Every Bitcoin transaction includes a small fee, not paid to a bank or an institution, but to miners securing the network. This fee incentivizes miners to include your transaction sooner. If Anna attaches a generous fee, her 0.1 BTC transfer to David is likely to get picked up quickly. If the fee is low, her transaction might wait longer. And here we find an important truth. The mempool teaches patience. Bitcoin does not promise instant final settlement like swiping a card. But when a Bitcoin transaction is confirmed, it is final, irreversible, immune to chargebacks. The moment it lands in a block, it becomes history. Before we reach that moment of confirmation, our transaction experiences one final and fascinating step: mining. Blocks are not created automatically. Someone must assemble them. Miners collect valid transactions from the mempool, bundle them into a candidate block, and begin solving a cryptographic puzzle, an intense competition of computational power that we will explore in Part 4. The miner who finds a valid solution earns the right to add the block to the blockchain, receives newly created bitcoins as a reward, and keeps all transaction fees inside that block. Once Anna's transaction sits inside a block that gets accepted by the network, it is said to have one confirmation. As new blocks pile on top, each referencing the hash of the previous one, the transaction becomes deeper in the chain, increasingly harder to reverse. After 6 confirmations, reversing it would require near impossible amounts of computing power. At that point, David can trust not by faith, but by mathematics, that the 0.1 BTC he received is truly his. The journey of a Bitcoin transaction is a story of cryptography, distributed verification, and economic incentives woven into one seamless operation. No bank manager approved the payment. No server stored a balance. No authority had the power to freeze or question the transfer. The network obeyed rules written in code, applied equally to Anna in one country and David in another, regardless of borders, identity, or status. And yet, a question lingers. How does the network remain secure if strangers around the world can try to add blocks? Why don't they cheat? Why don't they create fake transactions or rewrite history? The answer rests in the heartbeat of Bitcoin, proof-of-work mining, a mechanism that binds security to energy and computation, making fraud astronomically expensive. To truly grasp how Bitcoin stays safe, we now step into the mines. Not mines of coal or gold, but digital caverns where machines race day and night, converting electricity into security. In the next part, we will watch miners compete, solve puzzles, earn block rewards, and protect the network by making cheating more costly than honesty. We will see how Bitcoin turns raw energy into trust, and how halving events shape its monetary future. Picture a vast digital landscape, filled not with pickaxes and shovels, but with humming machines, warehouses lined with rows of specialized computers, their fans spinning like turbines, all racing toward a single goal. These machines are Bitcoin miners, and their work underpins the security, issuance, and integrity of the entire Bitcoin network. Mining is often misunderstood. The word evokes images of digging for coins, unearthing treasure. But Bitcoin mining is not about finding coins hidden somewhere. It is a competition to solve a mathematical puzzle, and the first miner to solve it earns the right to create a new block. As a reward, they receive newly minted Bitcoins along with the transaction fees contained in that block. Mining is the process that both secures the network and releases new Bitcoins into circulation, slowly, predictably, like the ticking of a cosmic clock. Let's follow the process up close. Thousands of miners across the globe are continuously assembling candidates for the next block. They gather validated transactions from the mempool, like shoppers placing items into a basket, and build a block template. Each block must reference the previous block's hash, include a list of transactions, and contain a special transaction at the top called the Coinbase transaction, which awards the miner's reward if the block becomes accepted. But assembling a block is only the beginning. To add it to the chain, miners must solve a cryptographic lottery. They take the block's data and feed it into the SHA-256 hashing function, producing a unique hash. The rules of Bitcoin require that this hash must be below a certain target value, a number defined by network difficulty. Because SHA-256 behaves unpredictably, miners can't calculate the right result directly. Instead, they must try different variations of the block, altering a number called the nonce, over and over until the hash meets the target. It's like repeatedly rolling a trillion-sided dice, hoping that one perfect number appears. The only strategy is brute force, trial and error, billions of attempts per second. Most attempts fail, and miners keep hashing endlessly. When a miner finally discovers a valid hash, something remarkable happens. They broadcast their winning block to the network. Other nodes verify it instantly, checking every transaction, signature, rule. If it's correct, they accept it, and the block becomes part of the blockchain. The miner is rewarded, and the race begins again with the next block. This process is known as proof of work, proof that the miner expended real computational effort and energy to produce the block. Proof of work makes it extremely difficult to cheat because rewriting history would require not only altering a past block, but redoing all the work of every block mined after it, faster than the entire network combined. This would demand an almost unimaginable level of computing power and electricity. Cheating doesn't just require being clever, it requires being overwhelmingly stronger than the whole world of miners. That is why attacks on Bitcoin are not impossible in theory, but economically and practically unfeasible. Mining serves another critical role. It issues new Bitcoins in a controlled, predictable manner. Unlike fiat currencies, whose supply can be expanded by policy decisions or political needs, Bitcoin has a capped supply of 21 million coins. No more will ever exist. Miners currently receive a block reward, new Bitcoins created in each new block. This reward halves approximately every 4 years in events known as halvings. The reward started at 50 BTC per block in 2009, then dropped to 25, 12.5, 6.25, and continues to decrease. Over time, fewer new coins enter circulation, increasing scarcity. Eventually, around the year 2140, block rewards will approach zero, and miners will be compensated solely through transaction fees. This design is profound. It builds digital scarcity into code. There is no committee deciding supply, no emergency money printing, no sudden inflation. The issuance schedule is known decades in advance. Every participant, from a miner in Iceland to a student with a phone in Kenya, plays under the same rules. There is an elegance in this fairness, in this refusal to bend to power. Bitcoin behaves like nature, predictable, neutral, indifferent to human politics. But mining is not without controversy. Critics argue that proof of work consumes large amounts of electricity. Supporters respond that securing a global monetary network requires real-world cost, and energy is the price of reliability. Traditional banks and gold mining also consume energy, but theirs is hidden in buildings, transport, vaults, servers, and geopolitical systems. Bitcoin, in contrast, makes its cost explicit. Energy use is the shield that protects the system. Without cost, there is no security. A currency secured only by trust is fragile. A currency secured by physics is resilient. An interesting twist emerges. Miners are financially motivated to follow the rules. If a miner tries to cheat or insert invalid transactions, nodes will reject the block instantly, and the miner earns nothing. Honesty is more profitable than deceit. This harmony of incentives is what makes Bitcoin self-governing. No police are needed, no administrators. Game theory steers participants toward cooperation. Consider this scene, a mining farm deep in a snowy region. Clean air, white mountains, and the constant low roar of machines. Electricity comes from a nearby hydroelectric plant, renewable, cheap, abundant. Miners convert flowing river power into digital security, protecting a ledger that spans the globe. Somewhere else, in a hot climate, miners repurpose natural gas that would otherwise be burned off as waste. Bitcoin becomes a tool to monetize stranded energy, turning what was once lost into value. The system grows stronger as miners join. More machines mean greater total hash power, which increases difficulty, making attacks harder. Difficulty adjusts every 2 weeks, ensuring new blocks arrive roughly every 10 minutes, regardless of how many miners participate. It is a self-balancing organism, alive, adaptive, always pushing toward equilibrium. Now return to Anna and David's transaction. It sits in the mempool, waiting. A miner selects it, includes it in a block, and after relentless hashing, finds the winning solution. The block propagates across the network. Nodes verify it. The chain grows by one link. Anna's payment becomes history. David sees 0.1 BTC in his wallet. Nothing physical moved, yet value crossed borders with no bank, no approval, no delay beyond the block time. The network silently nodded in agreement. The genius of Bitcoin reveals itself here. Proof of work transforms electricity into trust, computation into consensus, competition into cooperation. It allows strangers who don't know each other, who may not even like each other, to agree on a shared global ledger without needing to trust anyone individually. And yet, one final question lingers in the air. If mining secures the network, how secure is it really? What would it take to break Bitcoin? Could someone rewrite history or spend coins twice? To explore those questions, we step into the territory of attacks, defenses, decentralization, and why Bitcoin continues to operate flawlessly after more than a decade in the wild. The road leads us to the battlefield where security is tested. In Part 5, we will confront the 51% attack, examine how Bitcoin prevents double spending, and understand why decentralization makes this system resilient against governments, hackers, and even time itself. When people hear the word mining, many imagine digital pickaxes striking virtual gold. The truth is more mathematical, more elegant, and far more critical to Bitcoin's survival. Mining is the heartbeat of the network. Without miners, there would be no new blocks, no verified history, and no protection against malicious actors. Understanding this process reveals why Bitcoin isn't just functional, but incredibly resilient. To picture Bitcoin mining, imagine a global competition happening every second of every day. Thousands of computers, operated by individuals and companies across the world, race to solve a cryptographic puzzle. They aren't solving it by thinking or using logic. Instead, they use brute computational power to guess a number that produces a block hash below a specific target. The first miner to find this valid hash earns the right to add a new block to the blockchain and is rewarded with newly created Bitcoin plus fees from transactions included in that block. This reward is called the block reward, and it's how new BTC enters circulation. At first glance, this process may look wasteful. Why make miners compete? Why spend electricity guessing numbers? The answer lies in security through cost. By requiring real-world energy expenditure to add blocks, Bitcoin makes attacking the network extremely expensive. If altering a transaction or rewriting history requires enormous computational power, then honesty becomes cheaper than cheating. This is the foundation of proof of work. In a sense, miners act like guardians of time. Each block they produce tells the world, 10 minutes have passed, here is the next page of history. This 10-minute average isn't coincidence, it's intentional. Too fast, and blocks would propagate inconsistently across the world, causing chaos and disagreement. Too slow, and transactions would feel stagnant. 10 minutes strikes a balance between speed and security, between usability and decentralization. But here's the most impressive part. Even as more miners join or leave, Bitcoin maintains this 10-minute rhythm. It self-regulates. Every 2016 blocks, roughly every 2 weeks, Bitcoin performs a ritual known as the difficulty adjustment. It measures how long the previous blocks took to mine. If miners collectively solve them faster than expected, difficulty increases. If slower, difficulty decreases. It's like a self-tuning instrument. No government or company adjusts it. No committee debates it. The network adapts automatically. Imagine an invasion of new miners floods the network with computing power. Without adjustment, blocks would be found rapidly, rewards would inflate, and the supply schedule would break. But with difficulty adjustment, the puzzle simply becomes harder. The swarm of new miners doesn't destabilize the system, they strengthen it. And if miners leave because mining isn't profitable, difficulty decreases so smaller participants can return. Bitcoin behaves like an ecosystem reaching equilibrium again and again. This adjustment mechanism is one of the most underrated innovations in Bitcoin. It ensures long-term security without central control. And it often surprises newcomers. Even if a nation bans mining or a large facility shuts down, the network continues, heals, recalibrates. We've already seen this happen in real life. When China banned mining in 2021, more than half of the global hash rate disappeared overnight. Many predicted collapse, yet Bitcoin didn't break. The network slowed for a short period, difficulty adjusted downward, and mining resumed. Within months, new mining hubs emerged across the world. It was proof not just of resilience, but of decentralization. Mining also links the digital world to the physical one. To earn Bitcoin, miners must spend real electricity. That means Bitcoin is backed not by promises or military power, but by energy, by physics itself. Every Bitcoin is like condensed energy, a crystallized cost of computation. You can feel the weight of that when you hold it. It isn't free. It can't be printed. It must be earned. As years go on, the block reward decreases. Every 4 years on average, Bitcoin experiences a halving, where the reward for mining a block is cut in half. This schedule is predictable, written into code. It enforces scarcity. In 2009, block rewards were 50 BTC, then 25, then 12.5, then 6.25. Today it is lower still and will eventually approach zero. Critics ask, what happens when block rewards end? Why would miners continue? The answer lies in transaction fees. Today, miners earn most revenue from block rewards, but as adoption grows and block space becomes more valuable, fees increase. We are already seeing periods where fees surpass block rewards temporarily. Eventually, the network is expected to operate sustainably through fees alone, much like roads maintained through tolls instead of subsidies. No one can say with certainty how the economics will evolve, but the incentives appear aligned. Security is rewarded by market demand for block space. Mining isn't just about economics, though. It's also about decentralization and game theory. A miner could try to cheat by rewriting past blocks to double spend coins, but doing so requires redoing the proof of work for that block and every block after it. Unless they control more than 50% of global hashing power, they will fall behind the honest chain. Even if someone achieved 51%, maintaining dominance would be enormously expensive, and damaging trust would likely crash Bitcoin's price, destroying the value they hope to steal. In other words, attacking Bitcoin is like burning your own treasure to steal ashes. Cooperation is simply more profitable than conflict. This is the brilliance of Bitcoin's design. It aligns incentives so that acting honestly is the most rewarding path, not through laws, not through morality, through mathematics. Sometimes I reflect on how remarkable this is. A global network where strangers, competitors even, contribute energy to secure a system no one owns. Where rules are enforced automatically, without courts or armies. Where trust emerges not because humans are virtuous, but because the system makes cheating irrational. It's a kind of digital social contract built on cryptography and economics rather than authority. And as we understand these mechanics, proof of work, mining competition, difficulty adjustment, halving, fee incentives, Bitcoin transforms from an abstract concept into a living organism, a self-sustaining one. A system that breathes electricity and exhales blocks, growing stronger the more people use it. You begin to see why many call Bitcoin anti-fragile. Stress does not weaken it. Stress strengthens it. With this, we stand on the edge of something profound. We've learned how transactions move through nodes, how miners create new blocks, how consensus forms through competition, and how difficulty adjustment keeps everything stable. Now, with all these pieces together, we can step back and ask, what does it all mean? Not just technically, but personally. What does it mean to hold a currency secured by math, not authority? What does it mean to live in a world where money can exist without borders, banks, or permission? That is where our final chapter begins. When we first hear about Bitcoin, most of us come across it as a price chart, a news headline, or a heated debate. Some see it as a revolutionary idea, others dismiss it as speculation or digital myth. But after diving deeply into how Bitcoin really works, from its cryptographic foundations to miners, nodes, blocks, and consensus, something subtle shifts in the way we perceive it. It stops being just internet money and starts to feel like an elegant orchestration of mathematics and human coordination, a system that exists without needing anyone's permission to function. For me, understanding the technical inner workings of Bitcoin was like seeing the engine beneath a spacecraft. Suddenly, the flight didn't seem like magic, but mastery. Bitcoin isn't simply lines of code. It's a narrative about trust that moved from institutions into algorithms, from paper into blocks, from centralized authority into global participation. Before understanding the technical layer, I admired Bitcoin mostly as a bold financial experiment. But learning about hashing, digital signatures, decentralized consensus, and especially the way difficulty adjustment keeps the network stable across time and chaos, it gave me a deeper sense of respect. A respect not only for the system itself, but for the thousands of people who safeguard it every day by running nodes, mining blocks, validating transactions, and contributing to its open source evolution. There's something poetic about a machine with no leader yet no collapse, about a currency that no government owns, yet anyone can hold. About the fact that behind every Bitcoin is a proof of work chain stretching back to 2009, linking each block like a heartbeat echoing through time. When you hold Bitcoin, in a way, you're holding a piece of digital history, a verified, immutable record of human coordination. And there's beauty in that. Understanding how Bitcoin works technically can also change how someone interacts with it. You start storing coins in your own wallet instead of leaving them on exchanges. You generate private keys with a newfound sense of responsibility. You realize that when you sign a transaction, you are proving ownership mathematically, not asking anyone for permission. You might even run your own node, contributing to decentralization just by verifying the chain. You become part of the network, not just a spectator. And then comes an even more profound realization. Bitcoin isn't merely solving a technical problem, it's solving a human one. Throughout history, currency has always required trust in authority. Gold needed vaults, paper money needed governments, bank balances needed ledgers controlled by someone else. But Bitcoin removes the need for trust and replaces it with verification. It doesn't ask us to believe, it lets us check. For me, this represents freedom, not radical, chaotic freedom, but mathematical, structured freedom, the kind that is earned by understanding, not granted by decree. When you internalize how blocks form, how miners compete, how nodes validate, how consensus emerges without leaders, you realize that Bitcoin is more than a network. It's a social contract enforced by cryptography. Some people ask whether Bitcoin is still relevant today, especially with the rise of new technologies, fast payment networks, CBDCs, smart contract platforms, and layers being built everywhere. But I think Bitcoin remains relevant precisely because its design is simple and sturdy. It doesn't try to be everything. It doesn't upgrade recklessly. It is slow, careful, conservative in changes. And that's a feature, not a flaw. The base layer is like digital granite, solid, predictable, hard to alter, because something designed to store value shouldn't change on a whim. The updates in recent years, Taproot, Lightning Network adoption, advancements in Schnorr signatures, improved wallet UX, all point to a network that evolves intentionally, not impulsively. If anything I've said earlier ever becomes outdated due to a major protocol change, it must come from widespread consensus and rigorous review. Bitcoin moves slowly because it protects itself from mistakes, and I find comfort in that. Sometimes I imagine explaining Bitcoin to someone 100 years from now. Maybe they'll live in a world where digital currencies are normal, where children grow up learning about private keys like we learned about pen and paper. Maybe Bitcoin becomes a global reserve asset. Or maybe it stays mostly as digital gold, a store of value beyond borders. None of us know the future, and I won't pretend to predict it. But here's what I do know. Understanding how Bitcoin works technically gave me clarity. It replaced fear with curiosity, confusion with logic. It showed me that behind the volatility and speculation lies a system built on objective rules. Maybe Bitcoin will grow, maybe it will fail. But the ideas it introduced, decentralized consensus, self-custody, transparent monetary policy, will remain long after us. In a personal sense, Bitcoin taught me patience. Blocks arrive roughly every 10 minutes, no matter how much we rush. Difficulty adjusts gradually, responding to reality instead of emotion. It taught me responsibility. Lose your private key. Lose your coins. There is no forgot password. In a world where everything is recoverable and replaceable, Bitcoin reminds us that ownership sometimes means consequence. And it taught me humility. Because the more deeply you study Bitcoin, the more you realize how much you still don't know. Like a fractal, technical understanding expands the closer you get. So when I think about Bitcoin now, I no longer see just a digital asset. I see a living network of incentives, a symphony of hashes and signatures, a global ledger maintained not by authority, but by agreement. I see an invention born from distrust that ironically created one of the most transparent financial systems we've ever had. I see a piece of engineering that merged philosophy, economics, cryptography, and game theory into one elegant structure. And above all, I feel grateful. Grateful to live in a time where such an innovation exists. Grateful for the chance to understand it beyond headlines. Grateful for the opportunity to step inside the engine room of a technology that could influence the future. Whether you are here as an investor, a technologist, a skeptic, or simply curious, I believe knowing how Bitcoin works technically changes the relationship you have with it. It's like learning how a clock is assembled. Once you see the gears turning, you never look at time the same way again. Bitcoin is not asking for blind belief. It is inviting us to verify. And for me, that invitation changed everything.